Hey guys, welcome back here to Advanced Bass Fishing, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel today to check the video out. And guys, today we're going to be talking about fishing in rising water conditions. At the time of filming this video, it's the first week of June, and notoriously June has got a lot of high water. It seems like to me the months of May and June are when these man-made impoundments fluctuate a lot because of the spring rains. Like right now, guys, we're up here on Truman Lake right now. I've got a tournament this weekend, and the lake is probably 3 or 4 foot above normal, which is typical in June. So I want to give you guys some tips and advice on catching bass in flooded conditions that may surprise you, because a lot of times, you know, people have sort of this misconception of what happens when when the water rises. And I'm going to sort of break some of those myths a little bit and give you guys some tips and advice on that. Also, guys, real quick, I'm going to show you one of the baits I'll be fishing in this tournament. Guys, this is my Blaukat Throwback jig, black and chartreuse. I love putting a blue chunk on it, something like this. This is a really good dirty water color. I'll have my throwback jig link in the description of this video if you guys would like to pick up a few in my Tackle Warehouse link there. It's a really good combo. Big fish lure combo too, guys. Big fish love that color. And also, guys, I'll have, this is the new Cast King ALTI bait cast reel. I was talking about that. Basically impossible to backlash. It's got this Halo Vortex braking system on it. I'll have my Cast King link in the description of the video too if you guys would like to try one of those reels. And if you use the promo code Randy10, you get an additional discount. So appreciate all that, and thanks for enduring the plugs there. Okay, here's what happens, guys. Rising water is sort of like, it's sort of a complex scenario, because a lot of it depends on a couple different factors. It depends on how fast the lake comes up, and it depends on the water clarity as it comes up, and it depends on how hard that the lake is getting pulled, as far as how much current or generation are going to generate that determines, you know, how you want to fish. So there's several different scenarios to this. First of all, if you have a rapid rise to a lake, let's say, for example, you get one of those big fronts that come in that just dump a ton of rain, and the lake comes up real quick, and the creeks start to flood out and all that type of stuff, and the lake comes up 3, 4, 5 foot in a week. You know, that's common on a heavy rain. Don't expect those fish to move up into that cover. Most of the time what happens is those bass will hang out on what is called the original shoreline. They'll hang out on the same part of the lake as the same depth as before the lake came up. So let's say, for example, if your lake level under normal conditions is 700, and then it comes up in a week and you're at 705. A lot of times those fish will stay at that 700 level, even if there's flooded cover. They will not move into the flooded cover. They stay away from the flooded cover on the old shoreline. I don't really understand this. I don't understand a bass's mentality that does that, because it seems like to me they'd want to be in that little bit thicker cover, but not so. In fact, most of the time they're not. And usually the fish that move up into that flooded cover real quick are the smaller fish. So if you have a lake like this that comes up real quick like that, one of the things you can do is stay on the outside of the flooded cover and fish like a Carolina rig or crankbait, Texas rig worm, something like that, out a little bit deeper. You're going to do a lot better under those conditions. There's been several tournaments, guys, that I have fished before I learned this in the past, where I went up and tried to force feed and flipping, and I got my butt kicked by the guys that stayed a little bit deeper. So that's one thing to remember. Now, the next thing is, if you have some stability, let's say, for example, the water comes up 4 or 5 feet and it stays up for 4 or 5 feet for several weeks. Maybe they're not pulling a lot of water, but there's some stability to that rising water. After a period of like a couple weeks or so, those fish will start moving up into that cover, especially the bigger fish. And one of the things another thing that doesn't really make sense is if those fish start moving up into that flooded cover and they slowly start pulling the lake down a little bit, even more fish move up into it. And I don't understand what the deal is. You think that if the lake was going to be dropping, those fish should pull out. But I have found in my own experience, if you have a slow drop in a lake, once it's been up for a while, those big fish will move up in there until it gets to a level where they're just uncomfortable. And that uncomfortability level has a lot to do with the water visibility. Cleaner the water, the quicker they're going to move out. The more dirty the water, the longer they're going to stay up in that particular situation. Another thing, couple different things about fishing flooded conditions. A lot of it has to do with the water clarity as far as your lure selection and the areas that you want to look for. If you have water that has come up, significantly, like 4 or 5 foot, one of the things that you want to look for is you want to look for those bushes that are normally on shallower areas. So if the water comes up real fast and real high, I like to stay like on points, because points are usually some of your shallowest bushes. And on the flip side of that, let's say, for example, the water has come up, but it hasn't come up all that much, and there's like sort of like a bare minimum enough water in the bushes to catch them flipping. That is when the bushes like in the back of the coves are going to be better, because those bushes that are in the back of the coves usually have deeper water to them, especially if they're on a little bit steeper back end of the cove. So your areas are going to be, determined by that with it. Some of my favorite techniques, guys, obviously pitching and flipping is going to be one of my favorite techniques. My lure selection for flipping and pitching, I always try to catch them on a jig first. If they're not biting a jig, that's when I'll make some adjustment. I'll try to catch them on a different type of soft plastic lure, but I always try to determine the type of bait that they want. In correlation with that, I'm trying to determine the size of the weight that they want. And normally the shallower the cover, the lighter I'm going with the weight. Even if I have to like finesse it down through there, I want to try to stay with a little bit lighter weight. And the deeper the cover, that's when I have to go up into my line test. And of course, what your color selection again has to do with your water visibility. My general rule of thumb is that water visibility is under about 12 or 15 inches of visibility. I'm using a darker color like a June bug, black and blue, black, red bug, something like that. And if the water visibility is over 1.5 foot or 2 foot, I'm using a combination of like a green pumpkin, a watermelon, something more of a natural tone like that. And another thing about it is if I'm flipping and pitching in those more natural tones like the green pumpkins and watermelons, I always dye the tails orange or chartreuse. It seems like it makes a big difference with that. And my flipping and pitching is going to be 25 pound test Seaguar and Vizex fluorocarbon. A couple other things that can work good is running a buzz bait next to those trees. Sometimes can work good. Sometimes running a square bill crankbait next to them can work. Sometimes rolling a chatterbait next to those outside bushes are going to work. If the water's clear enough, a fluke, a floating worm, something like that. So it's not just flipping all the time that's going to work good. There's other techniques as far as how you can catch them in and around those bushes based upon how they're positioned within those bushes. So anyway, that's just a few foundational pieces of advice that might help you guys out. So I'm going to get out here on Truman Lake now, see if I can figure some fish out. It's time to film this video. This is Monday and our tournament's this Saturday, but I'm not going to be able to practice later in the week. So I'm trying to get a day in here before we get going. So hope you guys are well. We'll talk later.